Hi, Acadiana. I'm Meteorologist Dave Baker. Tuesday afternoon update on Tropical Storm Rafael that is now getting a little bit closer to hurricane strength. Those winds are up to 70 miles per hour. You can see the coordinates there on the left-hand side of your screen. And we are also seeing the pressures dropping off a little bit more. So that's an indication that Rafael is strengthening and will more likely become a hurricane here within the next 24 hours. Real quick, though, wanted to go over the afternoon radar, and again, we are looking at some very heavy rain that's continuing across portions of western Acadiana. Some newer thunderstorms kind of popping up over eastern parts of Acadia Parish, but earlier today we had that tornado that touched down near Basile. 2 folks were injured. It was designated as an EF1 tornado with winds at 95 miles per hour. We had a number of tornado warnings that were posted earlier today too, and a lot of heavy rain and some gusty winds, but frontal boundary still off to our west, producing those showers and thunderstorms. Allen, Beauregard back into Calcasieu and Cameron Parish. And then here on the eastern part of that front, we are still seeing some rather humid conditions, and we've got generally some pop-up showers and thunderstorms here and there. I will expect those showers and thunderstorms along the front to kind of dissipate as we go into the latter part of the afternoon and the early part of the evening. The front is going to stall to a crawl, and eventually we're going to be seeing the drier and cooler air staying over Texas, but it looks like here in much of Louisiana we're going to be staying more on the humid side, and there's still some bigger thunderstorms out in the central western portion of the Gulf of Mexico. And we've also got a little bit of shower activity in the eastern part of the Gulf, and that's been producing some higher than average winds and seas. So you got some issues out there, especially around those thunderstorms. Be careful if you're going to be near the offshore waters. But I did want to go over Rafael and the rest of the tropical weather outlook, as there is a tropical wave in the Atlantic that might be shoving its way off toward the west and might have a chance a couple of days down the road. That tropical wave you can see kind of drifting there east of the Windward Islands, and that will continue to drift off toward the west. Who knows? That might be Sebastian. Looks like it is going to stay a rather busy November, but Rafael is clearly seen there, just kind of grazing the west coast of Jamaica, heading toward the Cayman Islands and the western portion of Cuba. And a close-up view of that showing a pretty good circulation. You've also got a lot of thunderstorms wrapping around that center, so looks like everything is closing off. You've got some very warm water temperatures in the western Caribbean, as well as some high tropical cyclone heat potential. So with some low wind shear in place right in that immediate area, we could see some decent strengthening coming up here in the next couple of days or so. But it is forecast to be a hurricane. Hurricane warnings are up there for the Cayman Islands as well as western portions of Cuba. And then for the next 3 days, it looks like it will be a hurricane, even as it moves into the Gulf of Mexico. And then there's some track issues and also some intensity issues, but I don't think it's going to be in a very favorable environment once it starts to move into the central and northern part of the Gulf of Mexico, and that's why the official forecast goes with some weakening. But as far as where the track of the center will go, or if the center itself even stays together to reach the Louisiana or anywhere along the northern Gulf Coast, that is still a bit uncertain. But looks like we're okay for the rest of the work week, but it might start to affect us a little bit as we head into the weekend. So looking at the models, they've come into a little more agreement from this morning with more of a westward drift and then kind of a northward turn toward either southeastern Louisiana or the Mississippi-Alabama Gulf Coast. And the intensity models are all right in that hurricane strength, low-end Category 1 hurricane strength there, going through the next 2.5 to 3 days. And then when you get to day 4 and 5, you start to see those intensities kind of dropping off. In fact, by the time you get to the end of day 4, you are looking at all of the models calling for a tropical storm, and that's before it would even reach land, and then weakening even farther from that into day 5 and day 6. So you're talking about going into Saturday, Sunday, and even Monday as it continues to drop off. So that is good news for us here along the coast of the Gulf of Mexico. Now, there could still be some stronger winds in the offshore waters, but any kind of tropical storm force winds that are are fairly likely, I think, are going to stay over Cuba, the southeastern part of the Gulf of Mexico, and then going at least 100, maybe 200 miles offshore from the Louisiana coastline until we get into the latter part of the week. That is, if this indeed holds together, but still going to see some rough conditions in our coastal waters as we head into the early part of the weekend. So a quick wrap up here of our hurricane models. The HWRF goes with strengthening for a while and then a westward drift with quite a bit of weakening. In fact, it doesn't even look like it's going to be much more than a tropical depression as you start to get into the early part of Saturday. And there's the HAFS model going all the way through the early part of Saturday. A little stronger there in the southeastern part of the Gulf of Mexico, but then some big time weakening as it heads toward the northern Gulf Coast. Global models are all in agreement as well, with strengthening here for the next 48 hours. And then once it starts to get beyond day 3, you can see that low is heading up toward the southeastern Louisiana coast, maybe coastal Mississippi, but some serious weakening though as it moves farther toward the north. So at best, the Louisiana coastline, if it comes this way, would be a tropical storm and probably a low-end tropical storm. And the Euro model is a little bit stronger than the earlier run this morning for a while, but then you start to see some weakening, and it has a little bit more of a drift off toward the west going into the early part of Sunday, and then maybe a little turn toward the north. So we might even be talking about Tropical Storm Rafael as we go into the early part of next week. A lot of that is going to be due to the timing. The Canadian model, though, brings a landfall to the south central Louisiana coast sometime going into the early part of Saturday, but also notice there's another tropical system back toward the east, which possibly could be Sebastian. And again, that's that yellow area on the tropical weather outlook that's showing maybe a secondary system coming in. And the icon model just kind of has it drifting off toward the west and then kind of lingering in the middle part of the Gulf of Mexico through about Sunday. But then the trough may pull what's left of it northward. So right now, if we're going to see anything heading in our direction, most likely we'd be talking about a lower end tropical storm, and this probably wouldn't be occurring until sometime late this weekend. Right now, the timing is looking at perhaps Saturday going into Sunday, and even a few of them going into Monday. This is midday Saturday according to the GFS, so not only do you have the possibility of a tropical storm right here along the Louisiana coast, but you also got another chance for Sebastian coming in a little bit farther toward the east. And looking at Saturday, again, this is Saturday morning going into midday. The Euro model keeps things a little bit stronger now over the central part of the Gulf, and it kind of stalls out here for a little while, and then it starts to make its way a little bit farther toward the north as we go into Sunday and Monday. But notice on the Euro going out to Saturday midday, really not seeing a whole lot of action out here. So the Euro model is not talking about a tropical storm Sebastian. The Canadian model is the fastest of the 4 global models. Already has a landfall here pretty much as we get into midday Saturday, but it is also indicating the possibility of a Sebastian a little bit farther off toward the east. And then finally on the icon model, you can see that we've got a tropical storm or maybe a tropical depression out over the central part of the Gulf of Mexico. There is a trough that's up here. I don't know if it's going to be able to catch it. It's all going to depend on how strong it is out here in the Gulf, but a much weaker storm would not have that good vertical build, so there might be a chance that that trough could miss it, and then it would just kind of continue off toward the west. Also notice the icon really not showing a whole lot of action out here when it would come to another tropical system that could possibly be Sebastian. Now, the reason we think we're going to see some strengthening here in the next 24 to 72 hours, the water temperatures over the Western Caribbean are well over 80 degrees. In fact, they're closer to 83 or 84. And then we've also got high tropical cyclone heat potential that's over the western part of the Caribbean Sea. And if you're not familiar with that, we measure the water temperatures at the surface, but as far as they go down below the surface, in this particular case, in the western part of the Caribbean, those 80-degree waters go pretty deep. Not so deep and not so cool or not so warm anymore over the Gulf of Mexico. So that's one of the reasons why we think things will weaken as it starts to move into the Gulf. The other reason is there's going to be a lot of shear. Right now, It's in a fairly low wind shear environment, and where it's going to be going for the next 2 days will probably stay in a low wind shear environment. But as it gets closer to the northern Gulf Coast, depending on if it gets into the western, eastern, or just north central part of the Gulf of Mexico, the wind shear is going to be quite strong as we get into the early and mid part of the day on Saturday. So anything that tries to make it toward the Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, or Florida coast on the northern part of the Gulf of Mexico would most likely get sheared apart. And there's also going to be some dry air starting to come in from the west too. So that's also an indication that we would see weakening. And that's really the hope, because we don't want to see another tropical system making landfall on the Gulf Coast. We've had 5 hurricanes already this hurricane season. We certainly don't need any more. But I am not expecting this to be a Helene or a Milton or any kind of tropical system that gets stronger as it moves closer to the coast. In any case, it's probably going to be getting weaker. I did want to point out, though, the global tropics hazard outlook, and I showed you the one that came down last week earlier this morning. This is the brand new one, and check it out. Next week and even the following week, it's still talking about the possibility of some above normal tropical activity over parts of the Western Caribbean and even in the western part of the Atlantic. So this hurricane season of 2024, unfortunately, does not seem like it wants to end anytime soon. Now, the official end of hurricane season, of course, is November 30th, but usually in the western part of the Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico, things really start to shut down toward the end of October. But this has been a very unusual and kind of a bottom-heavy year where we've seen a considerable number of our named storms happen well toward the end of September and then through October, and now, of course, going into November. Well, I hope you enjoy these videos. Please like this and subscribe to my channel, and also turn on those notifications. That way you know when Acadiana Weather Today starts tomorrow morning at 7:30. And again, tomorrow I'm going to do a morning and an afternoon Let's Talk Tropics. I've got the South Louisiana Swim League swim meet, the championships for the high school teams. Had one today. I've got one tomorrow, and I've got another one on Thursday. So I'm going to kind of split it with you. Rather than doing the live one at noon, I'm going to do one shortly after the 9 o'clock update and then shortly after the 3 o'clock update during the afternoon. And also don't forget, you can hear my forecast on Big 102.1, Planet Radio 106.7, and Freedom 95.1, and any other updates on tropical weather or severe weather. You can always follow my social media pages both on Facebook and X. I'm Meteorologist Dave Baker. Have a great afternoon, and I will see you on Wednesday.